According to the US government's National Cybersecurity Policy Review, cyberspace underpins almost every facet of modern society and provides critical support for the US economy, civil infrastructure, public safety, and national security. The UK government's cybersecurity strategy in 2011 document states, cyberspace has now grown to become a domain where strategic advantage, industrial or military, can be won or lost. The growing use of cyberspace means that its disruption can affect nations' ability to function effectively in a crisis. To get a global perspective on the cyber risk, in a survey of 250 world leaders in 35 countries by the Security and Defence Agenda in 2012, 74% believe that cyber defence is as important or more important than missile defence. 84% see cyber attacks as a threat to national and international security and to trade, and 57% believe a cyber arms race is taking place. Damage or disruption to critical infrastructure is seen as the greatest single threat posed by cyber attacks. It is a national threat with wide economic consequences. The World Economic Forum's Global Risks 2012 report states that global governance failure will most likely be caused by a critical systems failure due to cyber attacks. Critical systems failure occurs when a single failure triggers cascading failures in the critical infrastructure and networks. This is particularly relevant as a critical system failure can escalate the risks of nuclear mishap, mistake, and war. Critical systems failure was identified as a key concern for most world leaders from government, business, and civil society, and will be most likely caused by cyber attacks. Cyber attacks are considered by some as a way to remove existential threats. To quote Professor Isaac Ben Israel, the current Director of Defense Research and Development Directorate of Israel's Ministry of Defense, if you want to hit a country severely, you hit its power and water supplies. Cyber technology can do this without shooting a single bullet. In many ways, cyber attacks against critical infrastructures such as power and water can be seen as threats against modern society, heading towards being existential threats in their own right. So, are we heading for a situation that cyber attacks will replace nuclear as the ultimate deterrent? Let's consider the Stuxnet computer worm. Critical infrastructure is now proven to be vulnerable to cyber attacks. Stuxnet spreads indiscriminately and is now found in 155 countries. We know it can physically damage equipment, such as the Iran nuclear facility. Other cyber attacks have destroyed room-sized power generators. Stuxnet's broad dissemination in more than 100,000 industrial plants worldwide suggests a field test of a cyber weapon in different security cultures. Now it gets interesting. The cyber attack attribution problem. To quote the UK government's cyber security strategy, with the borderless and anonymous nature of the internet, precise attribution is often difficult, and the distinction between adversaries is increasingly blurred. Some states regard cyberspace as providing a way to commit hostile acts, undeniably. So you cannot physically threaten or retaliate against a person or state you cannot identify or hold liable. So you can just imagine the consequences of a cyber attack on critical infrastructure occurring during a Cuba Missile Crisis conflict type event. Due to the cyber attribution problem, you don't know if this was a first strike by an opposing party or an unrelated third-party agitator. So to summarize, according to Deborah Plunkett, in 2011, Director of the Information Assurance Directorate of the US National Security Agency, there is no such thing as secure anymore. In the slide after this, I will quote Brian Snow. For 35 years, he designed and led projects in the USA National Security Agency, 12 years as a technical director. Many US government and military systems deploy his algorithms, including nuclear command and control. Several governments and groups now openly assert that the stability of nations is at risk. To quote Brian Snow in November 2011, "I am here to tell you, your cyber systems continue to function and serve you, not due to the expertise of your security staff, but solely due to the sufferance of your opponents." And it is this very fear of national strategic failure that is leading to the development of offensive cyber programs in approximately 140 countries. For example, DARPA's global-scale cyber offensive initiative, Plan X, will, and I quote, "support development of fundamental strategies and tactics needed to dominate the cyber battle space." Clearly, an effective cyber offense capability requires exploitable vulnerabilities in all potential target systems. That is, it requires collective ICT weakness. This represents a conflict of interest between cyber offensive capabilities and cyber resilience capabilities required for global society depending on ICT. In this presentation, we will list just 4 of Synaptic Labs and ICT Gozo Malta projects' key strategies for managing the risks. To quote Deborah Plunkett, "We can't misplace our trust in different components of the system that might have already been violated. We have to assume that all our components of our system are not safe and make sure we are adjusting accordingly." So strategy 1 is we design ICT systems specifically for human trust. I may need to mention this, but currently not. If you look at your global scale systems, they don't look anything like you would expect. Quote Deborah Plunkett again, "We have to design and architect our systems with the assumption it is well known." So strategy 2 is we must design ICT systems to be dependable during insider and outsider attacks, including attacks by management and technical staff, and protecting against covert malware hidden or injected into the hardware and software. It is a well-known fact that ICT systems are very rarely designed to safety standards, rarely using formal methods, and also they have serious conceptual design flaws that already undermine their security even before you try to improve your assurance in the implementation. So the strategy 3 is we can and must holistically converge safety and security capabilities together into ICT so our modern global society can trust and depend on ICT. In our 4th key strategy, we aim to resolve architectural flaws in the design of the computers themselves. So to quote Brian Snow, "If you're looking for a one-word synopsis of computer design philosophy, it has been to share resources. In the security realm, the one-word synopsis is separation, trying to keep the bad guys away from the good guys' stuff. So today, making a computer secure requires imposing a separation paradigm on top of an architecture that was built to share, and that's very tough. So our technology roadmap specifically includes designs to address this problem. So over the last 12 years, Synaptic Labs has been developing a globally inclusive, universally trustworthy and dependable ICT ecosystem to resolve key needs. In our view, that it will be economically and technically viable to harden almost any ICT system to be much more trustworthy and dependable, even for global systems. In particular, we must design cyber systems to reduce fear. Synaptic Labs and ICT vision is guided by the democratic principle of spirits of laws, described by Montesquieu in his treatise on political theory in 1748, in which he advocated separation of powers, employing system checks and balances, and preservation of civil liberties. So the goal there was to enable citizens to have confidence and trust and assurance in the integrity of the political system. Synaptic Labs designs these principles more strongly into ICT systems to enable all stakeholders to have confidence and trust in the specifications, products, services, and managers. For example, a key technique Synaptic Labs is employing in our technologies is to distribute the burden of trust to reduce fear. In this illustration, each chain represents actions of a sovereign or a group of aligned sovereign. In this type of system, the honest action by one sovereign or a group of aligned sovereigns, illustrated by the chain on the left, is sufficient to ensure security even against simultaneous failure of the three other collaborating chains. So if a sovereign is a client using the system, they can rely on their own efforts and security standards to ensure security, while also gaining additional security assurances from the participation of other unaligned states. So self-interest will encourage all sovereigns to collaborate together, simultaneously protecting their collective, interconnected and interdependent interests. In our paper distributed for this conference, we briefly describe our inclusive global scale ICT identity management system, which can include every country as a participating sovereign. It is designed as a malware-resistant system that addresses human trust issues by distributing the burden of trust across the sovereigns. It distributes trust in a way that results in a system that can protect the legitimate interests of all stakeholders, and by that we are targeting billions of users, irrespective of their relative power relationship, without relying on violent sanctions. By improving the trustworthiness of our ICT infrastructure and building trust between nations, these technologies can help support the nuclear disarmament process in a practical and constructive way. We reduce the risk of cyber attacks escalating nuclear confrontation or becoming an existential threat. So, to quote Brian Snow in November 2011, "We must change our toxic environment." In a public statement of support for our activities, he states, "We should also support and get involved in the forward-leaning efforts, such as those proposed by Synaptic Laboratories within the ICT Gozo Malta project. They seek to holistically address the hard security problems. This must be taken on by others as well." So, ICT Gozo Malta and Synaptic Labs are strongly focused on international collaboration. Our projects have and continue to benefit from input from world-class advisors and expert reviewers, and we genuinely welcome the opportunity to collaborate with you and your organisation in any capacity that seems relevant, not just technical but political, the whole spectrum. And my contact details are there, and I thank you very much for your kind attention.